Hello, welcome to today's topic in Brain Belief and Immunity series. The objective of this study is mainly to shook the ingrained belief you have on your memory. As memory makes up you as you to a larger extent, it might be a little hard for you to believe the memory fallibility that goes against your own belief on your own memory. In today's journey, we'll see that how the memory in which we believe in, which we believe to be vivid in our mind, might not be true. It might be the memory of the most shameful moment that you have in your mind doesn't happen. Or even if it happened, it might not be the way you are memorizing it. And we will see how the memory of the same event or the incident keeps on changing over time. So that gives rise to the question, are your memories yours? Let's start the discussion with two questions. Question number 1. Will you confess a crime that you have never committed? This person named Stephen spent 17 years of his life in prison for murdering a schoolgirl Leslie. Though he had confessed his guilt to the police, the evidence later proved that he was innocent. If you think that Stephen must have been suffering from some neural or psychiatric disorder and labeled it as an odd case out there, here is the statistics for you. From the Innocence Project out there, which has a mission to free the staggering number of such innocent people who are the victim of unjust imprisonment. It shows that 25% of the self-confessions are false. So how is it possible that 1 out of every 4 self-confessions prove to be false? This paper, in here, research shows certain tactics may lead people to recall crimes that they were never committed by themselves, leading to false confessions. In a controlled experimental setting, suggestive memory retrieval technique shows within 3 interview settings, 70% of the participants in the study were classified in having the false memories of committing a crime. This is kind of scary, as scientists proves time and again that any memory can be implanted to you in the so-called controlled setup. We will come up with this controlled setup concept later, but before that, here is the second question for you. Will you convict someone for a crime that they never committed? If you are confident enough on the memory of that crime in your brain, you might do so, if your memory says so, that the convict actually done the crime in question. Here comes an interesting twist. It says that almost 75% of the cases, eyewitness cases, that is 3 out of 4 eyewitness testimonial proved to be wrong. It is not that the witness fabricate or falsify in the court. It happens even after they are confident enough about their recalling of the event and its nitty-gritty details along with that. Even their identification of the victim or the convict, which depends on their recognition memory skill, also do contribute for the failure. What famous astrophysicist Neil Tyson once said that no matter what eyewitness testimony is in the court of law, it is the lowest form of evidence in the court of science. In an interview, he told that if someone comes up to a neuroscientist or a memory expert and tell that I have seen it in my own eyes, that's the end of it. The scientist probably would say to come up with something which has at least some chance of being authentic. Your eyes and memory deceives you always. Hope it makes some sense to you now. There are numerous reports in the same notion. For example, here is the McMurtin preschool sex abuse case, where the child reports that she had been sexually abused by the teacher and the care provider. Ultimately, it was proved that the therapist had unintentionally implanted the false memory in the preschooler's mind. On the basis of that memory, the child is accusing someone. Over here is another case which identify a person in the court who had broken into her house and tried to rape her. The convict was released on the basis of the memory expert's evidence, which proves that even the victim have the wrong notion and the false memory of the person who attacked her. Over here is another case, which is a famous case in which the wrong or suggestive psychotherapeutic sessions implants a wrong memory in a 19-year-old girl that her father abused her when she was a kid. Father was successfully sued the therapist in 1994, which has been the first case to find the therapist guilty of implanting false memories. So all these events and cases direct us to study what the false memories really are. Our memory is basically reconstructive in nature. It basically edits itself continuously. It is kind of editing a photo using some photo editing software like Adobe Photoshop. Too much editing by a skillful editor may completely change the photo, and it might even went to an extent that you couldn't able to recognize yourself in the photo. Our memories are like that. Brain edits it continuously. And events, persons, suggestions, narratives, movies you watch, stories you listen, informations you are acquiring, all have a profound influence in editing your memory to such extent that the current memory that you have might not be based upon any historical reality. To understand it more, let's see how the brain stores memory in a simplistic model. Our brain is made up of basically 86 billions of nerve cells, which is the neurons. The 86 billions of nerve cells are the neurons. And whenever something is stored in your memory, these neurons in certain regions of your brain make a crisscross network, and which is called getting connected with each other via synaptic connections. But these connections are not permanent and are subjected to change by any external influences, which happens to us always. Here is the network map of the neurons. The neurons are loosely connected in the initial years of the life when the child is born. With the new experiences and teachings and learnings, etc., these neurons keeps on connecting with each other by means of synaptic connections. And after a certain age, the excess connections are pruned off, so that the brain becomes much more efficient in storing the memory and the information and the knowledge. Right now, when you are listening to me, this new information forms new neuronal network, new synaptic connections. And if these informations are already known to you beforehand, that is, if you already have the map of it in your brain, then the reinforcement makes the synaptic connections more robust, which is called synaptic potentiation, which converts a short-term memory into a long-term memory. That is repetition, rehearsal of the same known fact. Interesting to note over here that because the infant years have all loosely connected neurons, over here you will see the neurons are not connected. The loosely connected neurons during the initial years of the life, we have very less memory before a certain age. And if you do have certain memory when during infants or after you born, that might be the implanted memory, implanted unintentionally by your parents talking about you, about the time when you are a toddler or can't even speak. Because language always plays a crucial role in encoding and consolidation of the memory. Now, as the synaptic connections are plastic and dynamic in nature, external factors can influence to implant a false memory that we are talking about. There are a lot of research papers that studies about this formation of the false memories. How it actually happened is that is schematically represented over here, that if an event actually occurred and you forget it, or if it didn't happen at all, in both the cases, what can happen is that if a proper suggestibility can be provided by means of any external factors like some photographs, like some of the people telling you the story, some new informations, some belief, any forms of suggestibility with proper retrieval cues, if it is provided, then a particular memory of a particular event can be created, and it can push or implant the formation of a new memory. So let's see that what are these cues and what are the types of suggestions that can be provided. The so-called the ideal experimental setup, the controlled setup that we are talking before. An important aid of memory manipulation is the suggestive narrative. Take a case, any case. Say the case we start up with. Suppose you have been convicted for a crime. Let's see how interrogator's skillful interview style can implant the memory. The interrogator repeatedly tells you a narrative of the crime, imprinting it in your mind. He wants you to think about the narrative. He wants you to dream about it. At the next stage, the interrogator will repeat this narrative of the crime, but this time he puts you in it. He will include details you are familiar with, things you forget you have told him before, or some of the informations about you that he have collected from elsewhere. Maybe he will first suggest that you were an observer, but he wants to implant in your mind a scene in which you, who have already thought about that narrative, place yourself within that narrative. The more the interrogator can mix the real material details about you with his fictional narrative as you as criminal, the more his fictional narrative will find place in your mind where it can grab hold. He will want to tell him that you think what you think have happened. He will want you to describe to him how you think people present during the crime behaved. He is not in a hurry. The technique works best if played out over time. If he can keep you isolated away from anyone you can trust or whom you know, without access to the books, newspapers, televisions, without human contact, his odds of success go up. As when you are left alone, which often happens when someone is convicted and imprisoned, all the thoughts start echoing in your head. Memories based on facts and memories found in dreams and memories created by suggestions start to blend. The boundaries can become blurred. The interrogator is very curious as to what you think happened, how you think the crime occurred. He will ask you to think about what you would have done if, just if, you were the criminal. He will say it as it's just a little mental game, but he now has planted the thought of you committing the crime within your own head. He will want you to tell him out loud the stories of how you committed the crime. He will tell you that he is just curious to know what you think the criminal would have done, but he wants to hear that the story over and over on different days, but each time with more details added. Putting something into spoken words imprints it an additional place in your brain. He may ask you to write down the narrative for the same reason. So after listening to this suggestive narrative style, you might say that this couldn't happen to me. I am more intelligent than that. No, it's easier to plant false memories in someone who has the capability to think, someone who has an imagination, someone who is innocent and trust cops, psychotherapists, any high authority personnel from any reputed profession. Now let us learn about another aid for memory manipulation, that is imagination inflation. Take another case which I've discussed before about the preschooler's acquisition of the teacher and the caregiver in the daycare facility. This work has been published in a reputed psychological journal. So over here what happened, the preschoolers accused the teacher and the caregiver in their facility in United States. Here the psychotherapist's suggestive interviewing leads to implantation of a false memory of the event in the kid's brain. That is the memory of a sexual abuse which never happened in the first place. So after being nurtured by the societal forces, the belief may be activated when a patient encounters a therapist who also believes that the childhood sexual abuse explains most of the adult problems. When people enter the therapy, they do so to get better. They want to change and they search for some explanation for their problems. Patients come to trust the person they have chosen to help them, and they also tend to rely on the therapist's opinion. If the professional believes that a patient's problem results from the past trauma and that the patient will not get better without remembering, naturally the patient will work to find out what he or she thinks is a trauma memory in order to improve. Their suggestive interviewing style inflates the imagination, and the person in concern literally try to imagine something, and its imagination can be escalated with certain statements from the professionals. The statements like over here that you may have some symptoms of someone who was abused. The studies show that, or my experience tells that, most people with such and such symptoms were sexually abused. If you think you were abused, then probably you are. Remembering is an essential part, and if you want to be healed. Like this provocative and suggestive interviewing style, you have to get worse before you can get better. So this type of interviewing style inflates the imagination or pushes the person who is trying his or her best to get rid of the problems they are right now in. So what happens is the memory expert, the Elizabeth Loftus, who is the pioneer in the field of the false memory, said that once a patient believes that the past abuse may have happened, a therapist can strengthen that belief by reinterpreting other events in patient lives in a negative way. We'll check about this particular thing in the upcoming slides. Let's check on the famous study before that the Loftus have performed. The aim of the famous study about Loftus and Plummer that have been performed during published in 1974, its aim is to test the hypothesis that the language used in the eyewitness testimony can alter the memory. So what they have done is that they make the participants of this experiment to watch a film. After watching a film which have a scene in which the two cars collided with each other, participants were asked to describe that what had happened as if they were the eyewitness. Okay, they were then asked specific questions. A few people were asked about how fast were cars going when they smashed each other. Some were asked that how fast the cars going when they collided with each other. Some were asked when they bumped with each other, when they hit with each other, when they contacted with each other. And the speed that they have been asked for, how fast the cars were going, has been provided by the participant. If they are asked in the question how fast the car were going when they contacted with each other, the estimated speed was less than when they were asked what is the speed when they smashed with each other. This proves that the style of the interrogation can alter the memory of the participant in question. To make it more reliable on the basis of a dependent variable, he took 50 students and asked the same question, adjective hit with each other, and next 50 with smashed with each other, and a control group where no question had been asked. These questions are asked immediately after watching the film, and then she let 1 week to pass by. This is important, 1 week to pass by, and after this 1 week, without watching the film again, he asked, did you see any broken glass? Yes or no? So the question that was asked to the 50 participants about how fast the car were going when they hit each other, they said 14% of them replied that yes, they have seen the broken glass. When the question asked 7 days back, remember that one question 7 days back can influence and can make such a difference about the proportion, about 32% and 14% that they saw the broken glass. The interesting thing is that there was no broken glass in the original film. So what it says? It says that the memory representation is altered by the critical use of a verb can change a person's perception of the accident. Some critical words would lead someone to have a perception of the accident being more serious. This perception is then stored in the memory of the event. That's what they recalled when they were asked 1 week later. What does this mean? If you have a 10 eyewitness of a crime and if you interrogate them separately, you might get slightly different form of the event, the versions of the event. And sometimes that may be dramatically different as well. It all depends on how they perceive and what are the other factors or the leading questions they were asked. Even the adjectives influence in encoding the memory. Over here, the memory is encoded for the 7 days and that they are recalling after 7 days. A question asked 7 days before can influence the answer of a separate question of that particular event. The first formal study using memory implantation were published in the early 1990s, which is famously called as the Lost in the Mall study. So the basic technique used in this study involved asking the family members of a participant to provide the narratives of events that happened when they were young. And this is the twist, they add a fourth event which never happened, which based upon their knowledge of the participant that is provided by the family members. For example, they might ask the family members about the mall they visited when they were young, with the relatives, description of the relatives, their favorite shops, etc. And they put the fourth event, a created event, a fourth narrative event about that the participant when was a kid was once lost in the mall. And they try to figure out that what is the percentage of the people or the participants can able to identify, or percentage of the participants can able to recall that memory, which is actually doesn't happen. Interestingly, 25% of the participants do recall vividly the memory that they once got lost in the mall when that fourth event, that fourth memory piece narrative is provided along with the three narratives that have actually happened in their life. So Loftus, who have done this interesting work, is a pioneer researcher in this domain. According to her speech, she tells that I research on memory, but not when people forget, but when they remember. So this Loftus and her colleagues were able to plant false memories of all kinds, like chokings, like near drowning experience when a person was a kid and was saved by a lifeguard in the last moment, or planting the memory of some animal attack, or some demonic possessions, or even alien abductions, or even they can able to plant false memories that the person was a kid once went to the Disneyland and shook the hand with the bunny. Her group and the other scientists in this domain in the thousands can able to implant false memories in thousands of people. Their parade of brainwashing experiments continues till today. Across a number of studies of all these that I have told, what they found that statistically 37% of the people have come to remember the parts of or entire events that actually never happened. So what Loftus was said that just because someone thinks they remember something in details with confidence and with emotion, it doesn't mean that it actually happened, because false memories and the true memories have identical characteristics. According to her, the memory actually works like a Wikipedia page. You can go into your page and can change things in an article, but so can other people. In Alice in Wonderland, there are many instances which kind of fits with the modern neuroscience research. Many of the statements of the Queen can be compared with some of the latest psychological and neuroscientific findings. One of such quote is that when Alice was asked by the Queen to believe something which is kind of impossible to believe, Alice said, "There's no use in trying. One can't believe impossible things." In reply, the Queen said, "I dare say you haven't had much practice. When I was at your age, I always did it. At your age, I always did it for half an hour a day. Why, sometimes I have believed as many as 6 impossible things before breakfast." According to Loftus, in real life as well as in experiments, people can come to believe things that never really happened. Other studies that have expanded on this paradigm by introducing the photos instead of narratives. Wade and the colleagues, what they have done, that they are able to implant in the minds of the 50% of the participants that they have once taken a hot air balloon ride when they were kids. This was the original photo which has been manipulated and put into a hot air balloon, and this photo is placed into the family album. And when the participants watch the photo they can even remember, some of the 50% of the people who said that they can recall the memory of the hot air balloon ride, that they can vividly remember many of the details. Even the power of these memories is so much that the people can remember distinct details of the memory once imagined. They even tell the color of the shirt they wore the day when they get lost in the mall, or the age of the person who recovered them, or whether he was laughing and waving his hand from the hot air balloon. That in the real life, that the incidents that never happened. In another study, the famous study by Lindsay, over here, people were shown a childhood photo from the same time period as the false event. The research is important in understanding how someone can come to believe in past abuse, because many therapists used old family photographs to help their patient recall events. Researchers think that seeing the photo gives patient something for the imagination to work with. Seeing the photo resulted in more false memories, even when the photos did not depict the actual event. Even the most neutral photo, like with a smiling toddler in the dad's lap, can be reconstructed negatively if the retrospective context is built up that invites the abusive memories, kind of memory hacking. Now comes another important aid for memory manipulation. It's the social influence. So how it happens is, here the manipulator is you yourself. Post influenced by the certain social influence, your memory can change. It can be your perception, it can be the influence of the advertisement constantly claiming this is the best running shoe in the world, or whatever. Imagine when you are recalling and telling a story based upon your memory, kind of autobiographical memory, that the certain event that happened in your past or something, some experiences like that. This story can be anything of your life, but when you are telling the same story to your office colleague, or to your friends, or to your school old school friends, or to your family members, or in presence of the whole class, whatever maybe it is, there is a constant. Every time you are telling the same story, you are shaping, twisting a little bit of it, different version, slightly different version of the same story, so that it fits the best in the situation and the people around. To make sure you are the central person of the group that moment, modifying little by little until you never know that you yourself plays the role in modifying the actual memory that happened in the first place. And it escalates if the person listening to you input some details or related infos or his own personal experiences, which you incorporate as your own into and fits into your own story without you being aware of. Probably next time when you tell the story, you will incorporate that info as your personal experience. And so this is one of the reasons that probably in this way, when someone tells a lie repeatedly, it makes the person believe that that is the truth. So how our brain works with the false memory, why it couldn't able to distinguish between the real and the fake. To understand this, we must first understand one basic principle by which brain identifies or distinguishes between a real life event or an imaginary situation, or the imagery display of that event in your brain. The way it does that, it can't. Yes, that's right, that brain couldn't able to distinguish whether you are actually doing or performing an action or just playing a mental imagery of the same. In both the cases, the same brain areas are activated, and modern techniques of the brain study reveals that time and again. Think of a situation, any situation, might be your fear in public speaking, as you are thinking that you have to give a talk tomorrow in front of a huge audience. How you feel in such a case? Some bits of tension, anxiety, like that. How your body feels, that's the way your brain feels too. It plays the mental imagery of the same, be it a good thought or a bad. Even if you visualize something through your mind's eye, like last time you watched a football match or have a fight over some guy next door, say, same areas of the brain, the visual cortex, which you are using when you are visualizing or replaying the football in your mental imagery, are activated, and the same emotion control region of the brain fires while thinking of the argument, which makes your mind agitated. A chess grandmaster took this whole set of mental imagery in such an extent that they can even play the chess blindfolded. One interesting study on the impact of the brain by just mental imagery of an action is been represented in this study. So what happened is that the volunteers were asked to play a simple sequence of piano notes each day for 5 consecutive days. Day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5. 5 consecutive days. The brains were scanned each day in the region connected to the finger muscles. Another set of volunteers were asked to make just the mental practice of the brain. This is the actual practice and this is the mental practice of the game in their brain. When the brains are scanned each day, the top 2 rows, we find that the similar regions of the brain, that the finger flexors and extensor, in both the mental practice, those who perform the mental practice or those who have done the actual practice, have been activated. What does this mean in real life? It means that what you imagine to be happening is actually happening in your brain if your brain is concerned. Studies on the same domain is performed by the psychologists of the University of Chicago, where they took the 3 groups of basketball players. The group 1 was asked to practice foul shots for 30 days, each day for 30 days. Group 2 just instructed to just imagine the shooting the foul shots for 30 days, and group 3 to do nothing. The interesting thing is that after this 30 days period, when the improvement is measured by means of their foul shot scoring, it was found that the both physical practice and the mental practice yields the same level of improvement, almost the similar rate of improvement, that is 24% and 23% respectively. Do you remember vividly some memorable moments of your life? The moment like when your name is called for an award, or something like a phone call from where you came to know that you have been selected for the interview that you have given last week, or might be a phone call conveying a sudden death of someone near to you. You surely do remember the moment when you received that phone call. They are the kind of vivid snapshots in your memory, like photographic memory. They are called the flashbulb memories, which is the most vivid form of memories in our brain. So one such national case in which the terrorist hits the Twin Towers of the United States, that event has been used by the group of the psychologists led by the Elizabeth Phelps, a professor of psychology in New York University. What they have done, they have conducted this experiment on 1500 participants, and they were asked some of the simple questions like that what are you doing when the plane hits the Twin Towers, or who are you with when the plane hits the Twin Towers, something like that. So they have recruited 1500 people and they have asked these questions the 1 week after the event and 1 year after the event, 2 years down the line of the event, like in 2004. And what they saw that when not everyone reported the same. As the years rolled on, their answers kept on changing, even of the moment which seemed to have the flashbulb vivid memory. It kept on changing slowly, like for answering a question, what are you doing at the time when the plane hits the tower? So 1 week after someone said I was cooking pasta, say it's just an example. 1 year later, they are saying that I was cooking noodles. 2 years later, I was in kitchen baking a cake. I was having, down the line, after a few more years, I was having a cake in my drawing room and watching the TV when the news alerts flashed on the screen. Again, the time passed. I was in the kitchen doing my dishes and then my land phone rang in the drawing room and the phone call provided me the news. It's not they are creating the memory. They believe this memory to be the truth. A classic study published over here shows that how our attention shapes our memory. Very crucial factor, how our attention shapes our memory. What happened over here is that experimenter 1 was initiated a conversation with a pedestrian in a university campus, for asking a road direction. At that time, 2 other experimenter carrying a door passes in between through them through these two people, the experimenter 1 and the pedestrian. What happens at that time? There is a visual blockage of the pedestrian, and using that visual blockage, the pedestrian 1 slips away, and another experimenter 2, comes and stands in its place. So the idea is to now see that how many pedestrians can actually recognize the change to the singly attended person. That's what the centrally attended changing object. So whether they are not confused, they are only focusing on the experimenter 1 when he's providing the road direction. So they found that only 50% of the people actually noticed the change, even sometime when they were completely different race, and even more astounding, in some of the cases when the sex or the gender of the person changed. It shows how our attention shapes our memory, and how even if actual scenarios get changed, we even couldn't able to recognize and recall the past event with accuracy. Decades ago, psychologists theorized that the brain imprints such details into a memory. Like some brain actually is like kind of a video recorder. Our memory is kind of video recorder, and when we want to recall a memory, we just play the video. Actually, it doesn't happen like that way. Memory is like a traveler which pluck fragments from the present and insert it into the past experiences or memory. So the memory rewrites the past with the current information. That's important. So what situation you are right now in, what are the current informations you are acquiring from the surroundings, actually shapes the memory that is there. The twist is that our brain is structurally different from each other, and these differences mean that even exactly same event will be remembered differently by two persons. Think of this as the memory panel of a particular event, in your brain, memory of a particular event, and you have lost this particular block from that memory, or it might have been faded away. So some parts of it got faded due to pruning of the synaptic connections between the neurons. Now the brain abhors vacuum. It tries to fill the gap by creating or implanting the memory chip in that place that fits the best on the basis of the background relevant information it have. That is the background it have. These are the background information it have. So you try to fit in this gap. So over here you will find the two options that the brain might have to fit in. One is the black piece, one is the orange piece. So interestingly, that the orange fits the best, as according to the background both are off-white. This is pure white background, so the brain will choose this thing to fit. So it does not necessarily mean that the information that has been lost by you from here is replaced. It is the best possible fit the brain actually can possibly have at that moment, depending upon the current information or the current mental status or the mental setup that you do have. So what happened is that this implantation that is happening over here is an ongoing process that is always happening in your brain continuously, and you have, or we don't have, any idea or awareness about the change that our memory is continuously reconstructing. This change is influenced by the informations, the upcoming events, even or the guided imagery, or what we have talked about, the suggestive narratives, as discussed already. An emotional event leads to more ingrained, accurate memories. For example, the memories for dramatic events often feel more vivid, and people feel more confident in their memories. But in fact, they are just as prone as being forgotten as ordinary memories. Furthermore, it has been seen that an event is stressful. This is likely to interfere in remembering the details of that memory. To understand this memory replacement and the reconstruction, that is brain editing of the memory, we will look into another critical brain editing that helps us to see, the visualize. It's mode of editing that is conceptually kind of similar to how our memory is edited in our brain. So here you go. This is our eye and the side view of the eye, and the light rays is coming from these directions and hitting to the back of the eye in the retina, where we have the rods and the cone cells that helps us to visualize. And these rods and cone cells have the nerve endings that goes that comes out from the eye by means of the optic nerves that reaches our brain, which interprets the image. Now the position from where the nerves are leaving the eye, there is no rods and cone cells. That makes that region insensitive to capture any information of light, like this red colored light ray, for example. It's coming, when it's hitting over there, it doesn't create any images. This is the blind spot of our eye. So basically, if you are focusing right now in this central region of this disc, if this is your visual field, then what is happening is that you have a black spot or the blind spot somewhere over here, and this blind spot is basically is continuously present, but you are not aware of that. Somewhat in your periphery, in your vision field, are the objects from where the light rays are coming and hitting your blind spot. It should make the vision of the image in our eye to constantly have a black spot. You are talking with the person, say person X, and person Y is standing beside him. While your vision focus on person X face, you might have been seem to have a black spot in place of person Y face. It never happened like that way, right? We have no clue of having a blind spot, but it is always there. Whether you are seeing, even when you are watching this video, part of the screen or the background must have been in your blind spot. So how does eye manages to get rid of it? The answer is it doesn't. The brain does it for that. And that is the brain editing software, if you can tell it like that way, kind of photoshopping and filling the gap in the vision on the basis of the information on the background. The spot is filled up by the best fit imagery depending upon the background information of that. Let's test it by yourself. So here I will strongly recommend you to take this activity. It is really a fun, and it will make you realize the power of brain photoshopping in less than a minute time. Close your left eye and approach the screen while staring at this plus sign over here. This plus sign over here. If you are watching this video in a handheld device, then you can hold the device screen some distance away from your eyes by extending your hand and slowly making the device to come closer to your eyes. If you are in your desktop, you probably have to physically move yourself. When you slowly make the screen approaching towards you while concentrating hard only on the plus sign, keeping your left eye closed, at a particular distance you will feel that this black dot is not anymore there. It vanishes, this black dot. So if you successfully done it, you have seen the magic of vanishing the black dot. But your activity doesn't end here. You have to repeat it once more. The same thing, but this time in this figure. The same principle, close left eye and make the screen approach towards you from a little distance. Slowly pause the video and do it. Again, if you've done it properly, you find the black dot vanishes. So why do you think that I repeat the same exercise twice? Do you notice any change? When the black dot vanishes in the first figure, that is over there, over here, that activity over on that previous image, in the first figure, a white space takes over the black spot. Over here, in this case, in this particular figure that is in your in your screen, whenever you are concentrating on the black cross, this black spot falls on your blind spot, that place is covered by a yellow patch. So why? White in that case, yellow in this case, because of the background. Your brain is photoshopping the available surroundings. Over here it is yellow, available surroundings, and put the information that best fits over there. While in the case of former figure, yellow this time over here is the background. So it shows the editing capability of your brain to fill up the blank in your vision on the basis of the available background info. And it is happening seamlessly all the time during our vision and also for our memory. When a part of a patch of the memory gets erased, the place is filled up by the brain, creating information that best fits in that according to the background, which might not be the real actual event over there. Welcome the Alice and the Queen again, where the Queen remarked, "It's a poor sort of memory that only works backward." So as what our memory does, or we have the idea of our memory. So the Alice asked, "What sort of things do you remember best?" The queen replied, "Oh, things that happened the weeks after the next." So, since the mid 2000s, the neuroscientists started to realize that memory is not really the thing about the past. It's about helping you act appropriately in the future. So, you need to project yourself forward to work out the best course of action. And for that purpose, our memory reconstructs itself to provide us the best advantage for the days to come. According to the queen, quoting that happened, things that happened the week after the next. So here goes another activity for you. It will reveal many of the aspects of the memory again within a minute time. So let's try it out. It will be fun. I will flash few words and let it be on your screen for around say 10 seconds. Try to remember as many of them as I will ask you to recall them later. So here goes the list for you. It's dream, sleep, night, mattress, snooze, sheet, nod, tired, night, gorilla, insomnia, blanket, night, alarm, nap, snore, pillow. Pause the video over here and try to remember as many words from the list and then play it again. So this is the most important. Try as many words as possible. You can, even if you think you can't remember, try to push yourself. There are some words hidden in your memory. It must be there. So try it and then play the video again. Pause it over here. So now let's check that how fair we have done in remembering the words. Do your list contains the words that I will just now write it down, or if you are lazy enough that you have never written it down by yourself, let's check that whether you can recall the words from the list. So dream, was it there? Pillow, mattress, bed, night, gorilla. Is it there in your list? Dream, pillow, mattress, bed, night, gorilla, as far as I can remember. So you might have few other words as well. So this will be suffice to prove the point that I am going. So here is the list for you again. Dream, it's there. Pillow, it's there. The first word in the list, the dream, this is called primacy effect. This is because it is in the first position of the list, there's a more chance of it getting remembered. This is the last word of the list. This is called recency effect. Because it is the last, again there is a more chance to be there. So gorilla, it's there, right? This is called the surprise effect, because this gorilla doesn't fits in with the other words in the list. It fits with the notion of the mattress. Yes, it is there. So night, yes, this is there. Night, 3 times, night, night. So this is the repetitive effect. And bed, there is no bed. So this is the false memory effect. 70% of the people taking the test have remembered to find this word bed. This is the false memory effect. So the primacy effect in the class, when most of the students remember the things or the information provided by the lecturer at the beginning of the class or at the end of the class, or if something surprising or happened in the class or something repeated in the class. And this is the false memory effect, something that we think that we have listened depending upon the notion of the list. This is called the serial position effect. The famous this work has been done. This is a serial position effect. And there are many such lists. This is another list for you. If you try it out, you can try it yourself, to pause the video and do it. So over here, most of the people incorporate anger as the false memory effect. So now we think that we have the memory of something that happened, or something we have listened to, or we have heard. So this is not the case. You have seen over here, your brain is trying to close the logical gap. You might think you may not remember all the list, but you think that you surely remember only the things that have happened or that have been shown. But that is not the case over here. They're like the false memory effect. From this false memory effect we have seen, this has been our latest study on this month itself, the March 2019, on memory on the serial position effect incorporating the false memory. This work has been adapted from the 1995 work on the creating the false memories, remembering the words that are not presented in the list. So what is this memory fallibility tells us about belief, and how it has the possibility to even affect our health and immunity, where we are leading to. In the last lecture in this brain, belief and immunity series, we talked about the neuroplasticity. Those who haven't listened to that can find the link below over here. Basically, due to this neuroplastic nature of the brain, that it can modulate itself, because it is malleable and changes over time, it can be influenced by many factors, like for example over here, the thoughts, feelings, actions. Any neural activity, that is any mental activity, can create the neural structure, that is the nerves, the neurons getting connected to form new synaptic connections in between, and repeating that mental activity. For example, believing in a lie or telling a lies repeatedly. It can be any of the suggestions that is being provided. It can be for the good or for the worst. Any of the time, in the repetition of the mental activity can strengthen that neural connection until and a time will come that when these neurons were together make this long lasting circuits, and ultimately that if you believe something to be the truth, to fall over here somewhere in the truth spectrum, that is the truth for you, because truth is nothing but what you believe the truth is. It is the belief system that actually affects us. There's misinformation everywhere, and if we believe some of these informations to be true, it can be fake news everywhere, which is predominant in today's world. And as you believe those misinformation, that becomes the truth for you. If via the power of suggestion helps to implant something positive, then that becomes the truth. Memory is malleable. When scientists implanted the memory that a particular fruit causes health hazard during his childhood days, that particular person stops consuming that fruit, and or their consumption drops drastically. As more and more we become prone to the reconstructive memory, the way it is reconstructing also do reconstructed our own self, as we are nothing without our memory. Say if you wake up tomorrow morning without having any memory, then what will happen? You are not you anymore. It's the memory which shapes you as you. Your brain is not the same even when you start listening to this sentence and by the time this sentence ends. You can take a cliche stand that your brain is flexible, or you might be optimistic enough to say that my brain is constantly redefining itself, so as me. But whatever it is, the fake memory studies proves that you may not be the person you think you are. So next time if someone asks you, oh, can't you remember this thing? Be careful. Maybe while trying to remember, you can actually implant a new memory. Instead, politely ask for some evidence. Be careful, as you are only the curator of your memory, and be kind if you find someone who is demonstratingly saying something false. In the end, I want to highlight some of the repositories that you can check out if you are interested. This is the British False Memory Society. This is the False Memory Syndrome Foundation. It is an interesting book on memory illusion, about the remembering, the forgetting science, and I will strongly recommend you to check some of the talks and the video. This is a tech talk, how reliable is the memory of the pioneer in this field, Elizabeth Loftus. And of course, don't forget to remember in listening to my next upload. I know that your memory is fallible, so before it gets fades out, any new information deletes your memory, try and hit the subscribe button to keep yourself updated about the wonders within you. Thank you for listening.